Kitty. Thank you for joining me today on another episode of On Board with CLIKASiA, where we feature outstanding professionals in their respective fields. And today on board with us is Miss Farrah Qazi. Hi, Farrah. How are you?
It's so nice to see you.
Well,
Thanks for having me on.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you for taking your time to talk to us. I mean, we do have a lot of questions to ask you, and people want to know your background, how you get on your career, your career path, obviously.
Yeah. I'm happy to talk about it.
All right, so I'm going to start the conversation by asking you a few fun questions so people can get to know you a little better. You don't have to think about the answer very seriously, just instinct. That's good.
Right.
All right, so let's go. Coffee or tea person?
Neither. Surprisingly, I don't drink caffeine, and everyone is always really shocked about it. So if I go to Starbucks, I get a strawberry refresher, but I don't get milk. Or I get a bubble tea someplace, but that's about it.
Bubble tea, yes, that's the way to go.
My
All right, so are you a night owl or a morning person?
Night.
Night. All right, so what about your ice cream flavor? Favorite one?
Oh my gosh. Chocolate chip, anything chocolate. So mint chocolate chip or chocolate brownie or just whatever. Just give me chocolate.
Okay, Friends or Seinfeld?
What, Friends or Seinfeld? Friends.
Oh, me too. Yay.
Yes.
All right.
Oh my gosh. I've done everything, and especially with the reunion that came out and everything, like I've been in heaven. So.
Oh my God, I did too. I watch everything.
Everything, yeah.
Recite everything they talk about.
Yeah.
So can you please tell everybody a little about yourself, your company, your background, like where you come from, and how did you get on this path of being a lawyer?
Sure. Okay. Well, how much time do you have? There's so much to do. Okay. Well, my name is Farrah Qazi. I am an immigration and an estate planning attorney. My practice is predominantly immigration and deportation defense and finding solutions for undocumented families so that they can stay together and be able to fix their papers without leaving the United States. That is a specialty that I have. I have always felt very, very strongly about helping the immigrant community in whatever way I could. So even from a very young age, I was always volunteering in refugee centers or providing translation services, or just volunteering in general and whatever I could to try to help people to assimilate and to adjust to their new lives. I've been fascinated by the immigrant experience. So I think this was just a real natural segue for me to get into law and to be able to advocate for the same people.
Oh, wow, that's really amazing. Because as an immigrant myself, I know how difficult it is to migrate your whole life here. And especially with the process, it's just like, it's constantly changing as well. Like, you never really know what is happening. And, like the most traumatic event was like back in, when Trump was the president, the issues with the border. Were you part of it too? Like, were you?
So that's what, yes, actually, to be perfectly honest, I have always worked in immigration law. I've always worked with immigrant issues, but it wasn't until about 4 or 5 years ago when the first Muslim ban actually hit the airports that I decided to dedicate even more of my time to immigrant experiences and immigrant law, because when that happened, they had actually put out a call to action asking for any lawyers to go to the nearest airport because people were being detained at this rapid rate. What was happening was that it was such a chaotic time because people were flooding the airports, and because there had been placed this Muslim ban, all of a sudden all the people who were Muslim or perceived to be Muslim were being detained unceremoniously, without proper due process or without any sort of explanation. And so we got a call to action among lawyers just on social media where they said, please run to the airports so that you can support. And it doesn't matter if you have immigration law experience or not, just go. So I actually went that same day. I went to O'Hare Airport in Chicago, and it was just a frenzy where there were people outside who were protesting, and inside there were, Customs Border Patrol, police officers everywhere. There was attorneys on the floor. Everyone had their laptop. We were just ready to work, and we were trying to release people that had been detained and trying to unite families who were being separated or people who were being then sent back to their home countries. It was a huge mess. So I actually at that time felt such solidarity with lawyers, and I was so proud to be a lawyer at that time because so many people, I mean, there were people that were like tax lawyers and probate attorneys and, you know, nobody who'd even had immigration experience, and they just showed up at the airport just so they could help. And we had, you know, a lot of people there. We ended up spending weeks at the airport. So I was going every day and just helping out as much as possible, along with hundreds of other lawyers. And it was kind of like this, like, you know, like a community all of a sudden where we're like, oh, we're actually doing something really, really great right now to help. And that, I think that really shifted the focus of my practice even more, where I said, I'm just going to dedicate as much of my practice to helping so that this can't happen again. You know, this kind of chaos and just complete disregard for other people's, you know, rights and abilities should never happen again. So that's what I've done. So I've been very, very open about it. I do a lot of presentations. I do a lot of Know Your Rights seminars. I go into the communities. I talk to people. I kind of tell them about their rights, about their, you know, what they can and cannot expect from the government. And then I really work very hard with every client to see if we can find a way for them to get their green card eventually, because that's life changing.
Oh my God, I have like goosebumps just like listening to it. It was so traumatic for me too, because at the time I was in the process of applying for green card, and that was just like extra stressful. Yes. And not to mention for those people, I know it's like the, how do you call it, the DACA program? How's that going? Is that still going on?
It's stopped right now. It's only available for people that if they already have DACA, they can renew it. So you can renew it for a year. But the new applications have currently stopped, which has been a real bummer for a lot of people that were obviously excited about doing it. There was a short window period where we were quickly filing them. And so those ones are still being processed, but other new ones are not being processed currently. And you know, I think what you need to understand about whether it's DACA or anything is the semantics that people are using. People who are against immigrants or against immigration like to use the term illegal immigration quite a bit. And they like to say, oh, well, it's because they're here illegally, and so this is why X, Y, and Z. But I think what really needs to be understood is, for example, for many of the people that you see that are crossing the border, they're actually doing it in a very legal way. The legal way is for you to cross the border, to speak to an officer at the border, and to tell them that you are seeking asylum because you're scared of going back to your country, if that's true. And that's what the majority of them are doing. And yet they're being labeled as illegal immigrants, and it's not illegal. Like what they're doing is exactly what they're supposed to be doing. They're supposed to ask for asylum, and then they're supposed to wait for their day in court or an opportunity for them to apply. And I think a lot of people who don't understand the actual basics of our system misinterpret that and say, well, they're crossing the border illegally. And, you know, like I said, there's some people that are coming across and they're not necessarily encountering immigration officers. But for the ones that are and are asking for asylum, they shouldn't be lumped into the same category. And they're actually following the system, you know, properly. So I think like for DACA, a lot of times I'll hear like the argument like, oh, well, you know, they shouldn't have been here to begin with, and so now they don't deserve to get this, you know, this process. And first of all, for DACA, in order for them to be qualified, they came in as children. So they themselves did not voluntarily do anything, right? So it wasn't them that made that decision, and it's very
what
rare.
Age would that? Sorry. So what age would that be?
It goes from a certain date, right? So depending on whatever date was that they were here. So some of them are here, you know, when they're like 5 years old, or some of them are when they're older, but they didn't have control over that decision. And so when President Obama was in office, he specifically said, you know, these young kids want to get an education and they want to be able to work here, and they should be able to do that because they really came to this country through no fault of their own. You know, they came here and now they're kind of sitting around. And to be perfectly honest, whenever you're able to build up a generation, whether you agree with them being here or not, that can only benefit you as a society, right? So, you know, educating youth and allowing them to work regular jobs cannot harm our community. And I think that's something that I think that that a lot of people misinterpret, and they think, oh, and you know, by putting another group of people down, that doesn't allow you to elevate, right?
Thank you. Yeah.
It's not a competition. We can all be on the same playing field, and we can all lend a hand to the other person without jeopardizing anything of our own.
I couldn't agree more. Like, honestly. So you do mention that you do have seminars. Do you know, like, where can we find this information? Because whatever, like what you just said, that's such an excellent information, and I think people should really know more about this. I'm just getting educated by you right now.
Well, the easiest way nowadays, which is fantastic, is there in the olden days, I used to go regularly to you know, to schools and to organizations and to centers and all of this, and I still am willing to do that. But when the pandemic hit, all of a sudden those options were kind of limited, right? And are completely non-existent. So one of the great things that came out of the pandemic was the use of social media. And so my Facebook page, for example, for my office is Qazi Law Offices, and we can put a link in here. That has, I mean, hundreds of videos now of me speaking and talking about different things that people are eligible for, or new notices, or if there's a new update in immigration. It's been a fantastic tool. So it goes to, you know, hundreds of thousands of people or whatever. It goes to all these people, and everyone can kind of learn about their own situation. And the reason why I started doing that was really because I really, really believe very strongly that if one person has knowledge, then that knowledge should be shared with everyone. And if I was privileged enough to be able to understand the ins and outs somewhat of immigration law, then I really want everyone to be able to understand it so that they can make their own conscious decisions about what is good for them and their families.
Oh, this is so inspiring. I'm literally having goosebumps everywhere again.
No, that's great.
Wait, so obviously, you know, immigration law is changing every day rapidly too. So how do your clients, or let's say anybody, like your potential clients, to keep up with it? Like, where, I know I don't see, like you say, your social media to have those information, but if they want to find out the updates, what would be the best way for them to keep up with this?
So if they're doing something with my office, they get regular updates by email and by text message. They also follow all of our social media. So they follow Facebook and YouTube and Instagram, and we're on TikTok. Like, all of those are there for them for free, so that they can get any update. If there is anything important, our office is really great about immediately sending out a notice to everybody so that they know. So for example, like if there's a deadline, or if there's a new law, like when the DACA opened up, we immediately sent it out to everyone. You know, DACA's opening up. Let's go. Let's start your application now. It's very, very hard to keep track of, and that's why I think, like, being able to spread it through social media in this way is such a nice medium, because what breaks my heart is when people come into my office and they missed an opportunity, or they missed a chance simply because they didn't understand, or because they asked somebody and that person didn't have the proper information for them. So they have, for me, like, I tell all of my clients, and I tell all the potential clients, anybody who calls our office, I say, my goal is for me to educate you. You need to understand. I mean, obviously, if you want to pursue it later on and you want to get immigration status, we're here to help you with that. But more than that, in a consultation with me, I want you to leave understanding that there are options, and that it's not quite as scary of a process as it needs to be. You know, you just need somebody to kind of guide you and explain it. And, you know, for the most part, like my clients, they have been trying for years. Many times they've spent money, and they've you've used different people here and there, where they've asked their neighbors or their friends or their family. They've been trying and trying, and they just can't get a solution. So when we're able to find that solution for them, it's like a really exciting time for us.
Yes, of course. Just like my ex-immigration lawyer, she was saying, just need to peel the layers of onions, find the solutions, find the options, keep peeling, don't stop.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. That's exactly how it is. You just keep looking and looking, and eventually you'll find it. And I always tell people, I said, one of the things that I can guarantee to you is that I won't stop. So if there is a way, I will find that way. And if that means that I have to keep fighting and fighting for it, that's totally fine. Because for me, you holding a green card in your hand is like the greatest achievement that we can.
For sure, I can totally relate.
It's life-changing, right? I mean, it literally opens doors for you all of a sudden. So
so obviously lawyer is very important. They can guide you through all the ups and downs, and just giving you options to go through and get where you want to get to. Yeah. And the immigration law has changed so much, like we said already, but what kind of immigration law has changed the most? Which type? There's H101, there's so many.
Yeah, so many things. So I think we saw, we always laugh if you've worked during the Trump era in immigration law, you can really handle everything after this, because we had a time that the laws were pretty much changing every week. And so we used to joke around that on Friday the law would change, and on Monday we'd have to redo our cases because the law had changed. Yeah. And that was new law that we're gonna deal with over the weekend. I think, honestly, immigration has always been a contentious subject in America, which is weird because we're a country of immigrants, but for whatever reason, it has been a very polarizing debate, right? And so in every election, you hear one side say one thing and another side say another thing, and it's very hard to figure out, sometimes for common people, like regular people that aren't it's hard for them to figure out what's true and what's not. You hear, oh, well, the immigrants are going to steal my jobs. And then you'll hear from the other side and they'll say, no, immigrants make the society rich. And they're kind of confused about it. And so I think
society richer.
And one of my things is that, it's really, really important for you to separate the politics and really focus on people as people. And when you start to look at their stories and you start to understand that nobody willingly leaves their home, their place, their family, their friends, their language, and then crosses a river or swims in an ocean or goes through a forest or, makes these perilous journeys unless there's an actual, real, tangible reason for them to do so. And I think once you start to understand that in an empathetic, just on a human level, it's a little bit easier to understand the immigrant journey. And so some of the changes that have happened have been this shift in policies, but then also a shift in thinking. What we've seen, for example, during the Trump era, we saw very, very open and blatant bans on specific groups of people. So there was a Muslim ban, and then there was a very, very concerted effort that, Latinos were not welcome, or Mexicans were, classified as criminals, or whatever it might have been. And I think that was very, very jarring for the people that work in immigration law like myself, because all of a sudden we're like, okay, this is no longer just a political situation. We've now added racial undertones to the conversation, and that that became very problematic. It became problematic because now we have laws that are in place that are supposed to be treating everybody equally, but then we also had policies that were in place that were specifically targeting people based on their ethnicities.
Right.
And then one of the other changes that I saw very, very dramatically during the years of that administration in particular, but even now, is detention of families. And it's something that I'm very, very passionate about and very, very vocally against, because I have seen young children separated from their parents when they come across the border. I actually, one of the first cases that I worked on was a 2-year-old girl who was separated from her father and was placed in a detention center away from her father for 3 months. And so she couldn't communicate, she couldn't talk to anybody. Obviously, she was 2 years old, she had no idea. And the trauma that imposes on a child is just, it's very, very significant. So I, to this day, am very much opposed to separating families at the border, putting them in different detention centers, not allowing for communication. Right now, for example, this week, I have a case of a man he's 24 years old, but he's schizophrenic and autistic, and he came across the border with his aunt and uncle and was separated from from them, and now is in a completely different detention. And his mother is rightfully completely panicked because she knows that he needs medication. She knows he needs his family. And he's now sitting in a very, very stressful situation, which will only, exasperate his mental health.
Yeah.
And so, so those are things that I've definitely seen huge changes, where before maybe we were a little bit cognizant of that. Now I feel like we're not as much, and our country's goal more is to deter immigration, but to do it really at a cost, and that is something that I would like to see changed. But beyond that, I mean, there's so many different changes. Like I said, the ups and downs of DACA. There's different requirements now for asylum. One of the really great things that I think has really come out of it is this new understanding of a few other new tools. For example, there's a really great tool under the Violence Against Women Act for people who are victims of violence in domestic relationships or marriages with citizens or residents, or if they have children who are citizens and are 21 years and up and have like a tense relationship with them. They have a way for them now, actually thanks to Biden before he became president. This was an old law, but it's kind of been resurrected. And it's a great way for people to be able to get immigrant status without having to leave the United States. And it's been revolutionary for my practice in particular, for us to be able to identify people who qualify for this and then be able to get them their green cards when they didn't think they were able to before.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So there was Trump, and then there was pandemic.
Yes.
So how does that ever affect your business, your clients, the way you interact with them, or just your business?
So the whole thing has been really, I think, interesting for everyone, right? Because we all went into lockdown during a pandemic, and all of a sudden we had to pivot our traditional way of doing things. And for example, I have a physical office in Chicago, but because we were in lockdown, everything had to go virtually, right? So all of a sudden, like I said, we increased our social media. We started talking to people through Zoom. We started doing, video consultations instead of in-person consultations, all of those things. That whole thing shifted, and it was a learning curve, because it's a learning curve for my clients who weren't necessarily tech savvy to suddenly try to figure that out. And then also for me to kind of figure out how to do, to still advocate for people. One of the biggest challenges was doing Zoom court, because I'm used to, being in court, being in front of a judge, reading facial expressions, being able to kind of react to things, and we weren't able to do that. We were all behind screens. So and in some cases we didn't even have screens. We would just be on the phone. So that was definitely an interesting challenge. But I think, I think all of these things, Trump and the pandemic and whatever else, all of them made us much stronger attorneys and much better advocates, because you know, the more challenges that you face, the more you realize, okay, we can keep doing this. Let's just keep going. And the mission hasn't changed. I mean, the mission is still the same, to help as many people as possible. And I think during the pandemic especially, I realized just how vulnerable the population that I serve is. And I was even more determined to try to get them legal status so that they don't, you know, if we have another global outbreak or we have something else that's happening, at least they have the ability to be able to do more because they have, you know, residency here or yeah.
Oh my God. So to aspiring immigration lawyers, how should I prepare themselves? I mean, I do understand they need to have passion, empathy. Anything else to help them to become like an excellent lawyer?
And they need to understand that there's going to be a lot of sleepless nights, and they need to be very organized. I mean, they need to really have a system in place, and you need to have that type of personality that you can roll with the punches. Because I think, you know, and I'm speaking about immigration law. I'm sure there's other fields of law that will say the same thing, but in immigration law, you are constantly being thrown off guard, you know, and you have to constantly get right back up on your feet and like rethink your strategy within seconds sometimes. And there's a lot riding on it. You know, you've got an entire family's future in your hands, and you're trying to really, so the stakes are high. So I think you need a personality that can handle that kind of stress, but then also can roll with it, you know? So if you have a president who's not immigrant friendly, or you have a pandemic that hits, or you have laws that are very, very clearly against you in your case, you're able to think creatively. I think thinking creatively and advocating fiercely are probably two of the greatest strengths that you can have in immigration law.
That's perfect. Yeah, good. Thank you. So what are the tips for your potential clients who are looking for immigration lawyers?
So I would first say make sure that they're a lawyer. One of the biggest issues that we have in our community, especially in the Latino community, is this surgence of notarios. They are people who pose as attorneys, or they can call themselves, you know, experts or specialists, but they're not actually attorneys. And they will, you know, they practice out of a church, or they'll practice out of their home, or and they will fill out documents. But 9 times out of 10, they will fill the documents incorrectly, or they won't understand that by filling out one document over another, they might have actually put the person accidentally in deportation, or, you know, something of that nature. So I've had so many cases where people have sadly given so much money to notarios and then ended up in a really terrible immigrant situation just because they didn't fill it. So my first thing would be make sure they're an attorney. And how do you make sure you do your background check on them, you know, interview them, go to the consul, talk to them. And then if you really want, you can also go onto their website and also go onto the ARDC, which is the Attorney Registration Disciplinary Commission, type in their name and see that they're an actual attorney. And I tell all of my clients and potential clients, sometimes they think I'm being, you know, I would get offended, but I'm like, no, go check, because I want you to make sure that you understand, you know, who you're dealing with at all times. Second, make sure that you have an attorney who actually understands all the different solutions, because some of the older, every attorney is a little bit different, but some of them will only do, you know, like an old school approach. Like, okay, for example, if you're undocumented for a long time, that means you have to leave the country. You will have to stay there for a few years maybe, and then you have to come back. Because that's kind of that's kind of like the traditional way to do things. And sometimes that is the only way. But for example, in my firm, one of the things that I do is I have really studied ways for people to be able to stay here and fix their status without having to leave if they qualify. So if that's something that you're here and you're undocumented and you don't want to leave and you don't want to run that risk, then try to find an attorney who knows how to do other ways to fix your papers. They're all legal and they're all perfectly, you know, acceptable ways. It's just that they require a little bit of thinking outside of the box, and they require a little extra questioning during a consult.
Got it.
And then also, you know, pick an attorney that you have rapport with, that you're comfortable with, because you're telling them your own personal details, and you're telling them like a really, you know, you're really putting your trust in their hands. So don't pick an attorney who's going to be rude to you, who's not going to answer calls, who's going to, you know, make you feel bad about yourself. It should be a person who welcomes as many questions as you have, because now, even if I've answered the same question 100 times, I know that for that person, it's the first time that they're doing it, and they're scared. And so they should be asking as many questions as they can.
Okay. There's a lot of valuable information you're giving us today. Thank you so much, Farah. Honestly. Thank you.
I'm so glad to be talking to you. Yeah.
Oh, same here. So everybody, make sure that you follow Ms. Farrah Qazi's social media and her email and her website. We'll actually put those information under our YouTube link too, so people will be able to.
Perfect. Yes, follow along. There's so much good information on there, and it's not just because I'm talking on there. I mean, there's like so many good things that we keep sharing. So I'm actually really proud of those pages, because there's just a lot of good free information for people to understand their own rights.
I know I'm going to be on that website after this. Definitely. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Is there last information? Oh, sorry. Yeah. I mean, I just want to ask you, is there any last information you would like to talk to your potential clients, like anything about your company?
You know, I will tell them, I'm going to tell any potential clients that are, you know, that are listening, or anybody that's listening really, if you are frustrated, or if you've had a bad experience in the past with your immigration, or maybe you've gone to other lawyers, or you've gone to other people and they've just told you, like, there's absolutely no way for you to fix your papers, and you've just resigned yourself, I would do one last ditch effort and see if you can get another consultation and get some more information. The laws have changed so much. There have been so many new options. Many lawyers nowadays are kind of finding newer and more creative ways for us to help our clients. And so even if if you talk to a lawyer, 5 years ago or 10 years ago, things have changed. So don't be scared to make that one phone call that could literally change the trajectory of your future. And I would really encourage anyone to keep themselves safe and to understand that, we are here to serve the community and to try to get you as much protection as possible. And trust in the system, and trust in that there is probably a solution there for you to be able to get your legal work permit and your travel documents and your green card eventually.
Thank you so much again, Farah. I hope to talk to you soon.
Yeah, you too.
Bye. Have a good day. Bye.
Bye.
That's it for today. Thank you guys for joining me. If you have any questions that would love to be featured, please email us or message us on our social media. Thanks again.